Welcome to the Medical Muse podcast. Discover the humanistic aspects of physicians and scientists as they describe their career paths and any advice they have for current medical students. Each episode, we interview a new guest and discuss the future of the field. This is the Medical Muse.
Okay, welcome everyone. We have Dr. Williams here with us today. We're very pleased to have him, and this is also a special episode because we have our producer of Medical Muse, Tim Crowe, here with us today as well, our fellow M3 medical student. Welcome guys, and looking forward to this episode. Tim, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. So Dr. Williams, tell us a little bit about yourself. How was it growing up in Trinidad, and when did you move to the United States?
Well, first, guys, thank you so much for having me. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks, give or take a month for me. So it's nice to have a sit down with you guys because this is my passion. But to go back to your question, I actually moved, my parents immigrated from Trinidad when I was a baby. I was only 1 year old. So I don't actually remember much of that, obviously. Once we left, we actually moved up to New York where we spent quite a bit of years. My parents immigrated here with very little education. My parents have essentially the equivalent of a high school degree in Trinidad, and Trinidad is a third world Caribbean country of the Lesser Antilles. And my parents kind of understood very early on when I have an older brother, when my brother was born, Sean, that there are limitations in Trinidad in terms of how far their children can go, just in terms of the educational system, poverty, things like that. So my parents made the decision pretty early on to book it however they can. They left with very little money, and my dad worked odd end jobs. He worked 3 jobs, plus at times. He was a laborer by trade, different types of construction, et cetera, welding, things like that. When I was a baby in Trinidad, classic story that my mom would tell me was that there were times when, she would clean apartments in the building that we lived at in New York, and she didn't have anyone to watch us because she, 1, didn't really trust people to watch her kids, and 2, couldn't really pay people to watch their kids. So she would actually take me as a baby to actually go and clean houses with her, and would hold me as she cleaned houses. So that is it's not something I necessarily remember, but it is a core memory or a core sentiment that has really resonated throughout my life, and why and how I've continued to fight for what I believe in and fight for myself, my education, and to really strive for the best that I can be, because at the end of the day, I stand on the shoulders of my forefathers, and my most immediate forefathers are my parents, and they sacrificed so much for me for this exact opportunity to be able to share my story and to be able to propel who I am and who I've become to those, to those either behind, ahead of me, anyone I come in contact to. So that's a little about me. If we go a little bit further, the strains of New York, cold winters, things like that. My parents decided to book it down to South Florida. We had a little bit more family down here. So we moved to South Florida. I want to say when I was like 6-ish, 7-ish, if I remember correctly. Excuse me. When we moved down here, my mom was very fortunate that she got a job in the public education system, and she's been there ever since. Very, very fortunate for that. And then after a while of working odd end jobs, my dad, they saved up enough to eventually purchase their own business. So my parents, when I was around 10 or 11, they purchased a coin laundry and dry cleaners. So in fact, one of my tattoos here is, if you can see it, is a laundry machine. Why? Because when I was about 10 or 11, I did not have Saturdays off. It was the classic immigrant story of, no, you're not staying home and watching cartoons. You're going to work. So when I was 10 or 11, I was at the laundry. My first job when I got there at 6:30 in the morning, every Saturday, was to take a toothbrush and a scrubber and scrub all the washing machines, clean all the lint traps, and then it was a wash, dry, and fold service. So I would be folding laundry along with, the employee or my dad, my parents, helping the family business. So that was I did that until I was about 21 when we sold the business. I was almost graduating college at the time. So that's kind of my origin story.
That's interesting. So that's something about medicine is if you're going to go into medicine, you kind of have to be ready for delayed gratification. Like you have to put off a lot of pleasure now for hopeful pleasure later, or even just for any sort of reward later. And it seems like you got that from your parents because they were willing to pick up everything they had, move to a new foreign country where they probably didn't know many people, and then again, years later, move down to South Florida, start their own business, which is, a risk in itself, completely unknown. So I can see how the generational risk and delayed gratification can kind of step in there.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's something that you can't explain. It's something that's ingrained in my soul. Just that feeling of you got to do it. You got to do it, Andy. Whether it's now or whether it's later, whether it's X amount of years down the line, it'll pay off eventually. So, absolutely.
When did the interest in medicine come?
Great question. I get asked that often, and I don't always have a clear answer. Many people have this inception moment where, oh, I was 10 years old and I broke my arm and the orthopedic surgeon put me in the, I don't really have that story. I'm very fortunate that I was good at science and math when I was, going through school. And when I got into undergrad, I did my undergrad at Florida Atlantic University out in Boca Raton. I realized, math, probably not the best route to go. It's just not that entertaining, although I'm good at it. So I kind of went the sciences route. I was bouncing between dentistry, pharmacy, physician, optometry a little bit. And after really thinking about all of those, I figured I had the most options with going the doctor route. So that's really how it kind of came about. I was good at science. I had a few things in my mind, and I thought if I were to position myself to really make the best decision for me and not necessarily pigeonhole myself, because at the time I thought, pharmacy is just retail pharmacy. I didn't know that, there's ICU pharmacy, there's research pharmacy, and similarly with dentistry. I thought it was just dentistry, not, there's OMFS, blah, blah, blah. Optometry, there's ways to specialize there. I didn't really know those things. I just knew that going the doctor route, you have many, many options. And if I don't know it now, hopefully by the time I'm coming around to make some decisions about what I want to be when I grow up, like actually that decision, I'll be able to, make the best decision for me with the most options laid out for me.
Adding on to kind of Daniel's point that he made earlier about, delayed gratification and trying to, work hard now so that you can have a better future. Your family bought a business, they immigrated from Trinidad. I mean, there's a lot of risk involved here and a lot of years of hard work. Going to medical school is very expensive. And it's another huge risk. And being an immigrant family and coming from humble beginnings and already trying to, to support yourself, now taking on the burden of medical school expenses is a whole new challenge. And what kind of gave you kind of the motivation to say, okay, that's fine. This is still what I want to do despite all of, the risk involved, and I'm going to keep going through it. And how did your parents respond to your interest in medicine, and how did you move forward from there?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Well, first, just to go to what my parents thought, they were ecstatic, honestly. They were like, all right, this is why we left. This is the exact reason. We did not have those opportunities, but we left for you to have these opportunities, because in my generation, I could not do and speaking of my parents, in their generation, they did not have that opportunity. So realistically, they supported me and my brother and I throughout whatever we wanted to do, but especially, pursuing an advanced degree, that's exactly what they left for. So they were ecstatic about it. The finances, it's definitely something I thought of. Obviously, I don't want that burden on my parents. Not only that, they can afford that. It's kind of ridiculous, right? So even then, when I was applying to medical school, I looked at, my grades, looked at my MCAT scores, and they were pretty good. So I gambled on myself. I actually only applied to 2 medical schools. I applied to NSU and I applied to Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine in Bradenton. I wanted to be in South Florida, or excuse me, not necessarily just South Florida, but just Florida in general. I could have applied to FAU. It was their inaugural year for their medical school, but the timing was just weird because they didn't open their application until February, and I started applying in October. So I was very fortunate that I was accepted to both of the medical schools that I apply to. It's very rare that people just apply to a few and get accepted to them. So I had to make the decision whether or not to. I didn't really want to move as far as Lake Erie. To Bradenton. Davie was close to home. I wanted that support. So I had to make the decision pretty early on because I was accepted around, I want to say October-ish, if I remember correctly. I have this like recurring Facebook memory that pops up like every year. It's around October, like my acceptance letter. So I think it was around October-ish. So I had to make the decision because I had to put in a reservation. Either I go here or I chance it at FAU later in the year. So I said, nope, I'm not going to chance it. I'm just going to go to FAU. Regarding finances, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I understood that I will be in a position that one, historically, little brown boys like me that come from immigrant origins don't have. At the end of the day, I would still be making substantial, an income that would support me, my future family, and that's all it really came down to. Yes, there is a huge overhead that you got to consider, but there are ways to, lower those costs and, hopefully forgive it in the future. And I figured if I'm going to do it, I got to do it. Like the cost is the cost. It is what it is. So many physicians, I don't know the percentage, but I would imagine a very, very, very high percentage of physicians are graduating in significant student loan debt. And a lot of people are saying, it is what it is. I got to do it. I got to do it because this is what I want to do when I grow up. So that was my perspective. Go for it. It is what it is.
That's interesting. I've always kind of thought, regardless, if I become a physician, I might not be wealthy, but I'm not going to starve. I'll always be able to afford guacamole on my tacos once I'm a physician.
Exactly, man.
Buy the biggest house or boat, but I'll be okay.
Exactly. And it comes down to understanding your wants and needs. What do I want versus what do I need? I may want, a fancy car and this and that, but I don't need it. And I understood that very early in my life that I don't need much to be happy. I need a roof over my head. I need, support of family, friends, and that's good. Everything else is just icing on the cake.
Throughout this entire process, when did you start getting interested in family medicine, or were you still kind of undecided until your third or fourth year? Could you just kind of explain that kind of thought process?
Absolutely. So going into medical school, I kind of understood I didn't want to go into surgery just because of who I am. I know that the grueling hours, things like that, not my thing. So I was pretty much between FM and IM. I knew FM. And honestly, going into medical school, I didn't really understand that much about these things. Going into FM, I knew it was a little bit more outpatient based, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, see patients in a nice controlled setting. I kind of understood a little bit more hospital based, but also you have more options to subspecialize if that's the route you want to take. So I was pretty open between those two going into my first year, my second year, and then finally third year, I had my first 2 rotations of third year as inpatient medicine. And I quickly realized that inpatient life is not for me. Waking up at the butt crack of dawn, no, thank you. I'm okay with that. High acuity patients, although the pathology and, the medicine I think is super interesting, it's just not really for me. So I kind of switched gears to FM, pretty early on in my third year. I rotated through third year. I liked pediatrics, but I didn't only like pediatrics. I liked OB-GYN, but after catching like 2 or 3 babies, I was over the OB part, but I did like the GYN part. I like the women's health part. So I kind of realized that FM is all encompassing, cradle to the grave, womb to the tomb. That's kind of FM's tagline. And that really summarized what I wanted to be as a physician and outpatient, which, that's a nice lifestyle for me. However, when I was wrapping up my third year, I want to say my second, maybe third to last rotation, I had PDR at Broward, which was such a fun rotation. Everyone was so fun. Everyone was so welcoming. We saw high acuity patients because it was a level 1 trauma center. I clearly remember one time Dr. Amador, who is still the PEDS ER director there. He made some super strong Cuban coffee like he does almost every night. And he was telling me how he had a student just the month prior going to SVT because of his Cuban coffee. But anyways, I rotated through here and I started to flirt with the idea of ER. I like the lifestyle, X amount of shifts a month, you're there and that's it. Once you go home, you go home. So I started to flirt with the idea of ER a little bit. I had good board scores. I didn't have any red flags on my application. And it was at that time where ER started to really shoot off as like a lifestyle type of specialty where it was getting really competitive. So that was going into my fourth year. During my fourth year, during interview season, I made the decision kind of haphazardly, just based off of lifestyle, things like that, not really truly rotating in an ER, or rather an adult ER. I was like, maybe I want to go ER. They make good money, they work half the year. That sounded very appealing to me. And then I applied ER and I interviewed at like 6 or 7 places along the East Coast. And then towards the tail end of interview season, I finally got to do my golden month rotation at Mount Sinai ER. Great place. The program director there was amazing. The residents there were amazing. I clearly remember one resident, Dr. Abo, who's he's a toxicologist now. He's a venomologist. He does so much in the ER world. He took me under his wing and he showed me so much. But then I realized that this is not the life for me. This is not what I thought it was. It's a lot of nausea, vomiting, headache, flu-like symptoms. The action ER that you think of, it's a relatively small percentage. There's a lot of drug-seeking patients. And when you think about the high acuity, the risk involved of living in South Florida and litigation, things like that, it all started weighing in on me. And I thought, maybe I didn't make the right decision. Maybe I should have gone with my gut and go family medicine. Now, back then, I didn't know that you can rank 2 different specialties. So after that rotation, I was like, I don't really want to do this, but I don't really have an option, honestly, because I didn't rotate at I didn't rotate at an FM programs. Now, I have rapport at some of these FM programs in South Florida, but that's about it. So I ranked only ER, and lo and behold, I did not match ER, which ended up being the biggest blessing in disguise in my life, if I'm being quite honest with you. So I was like, at first, when you get that email, it's like, oh my gosh, my world is you're feeling like you're gonna pass out, right? And then I was like, all right, let me get my boots up. I don't want to do ER. In fact, at the time, the Mount Sinai program director, he contacted me and said, hey, there's this new program up in Michigan. I can get you in if you want. And I said, no, this ain't the life for me. So I just happened to contact Broward and Palmetto FM because I had some connects there. And I just happened to speak to the right person at the right time. At the time, it was Dr. Jaffe, who was the program director there. He reviewed my application, made a few calls just to get a vibe of who I am. And I rotated at the Davie FM clinic. Everyone had good things to say about me, so very fortunate that he accepted me right then and there. And then one of my best friends also joined that program as well, Dr. Axman. So it ended up being the biggest blessing in disguise for me.
So did you have to go through the SOAP process, or did you just reach out to someone based on connections?
So the SOAP process was different back then. So now the SOAP process that you guys know is the MD process, where if you don't match, you have to wait a week. Honestly, I don't want to misspeak because I don't know exactly what it is now, but you have to wait X amount of time, then they open up the open positions and then you could reach out. Back then it was a little bit different. If you see, because I believe they used to publish open spots like almost right after the match. You can see these places that have open spots and you can basically reach out to them. And I knew I wanted to be in South Florida. So those are my top 2 to reach out to. So yeah, that's how I did it. I think I didn't match. And then by that night, I want to say, I ended up going into FM. Again, it's a Facebook memory that I have that is recurring every year. I see it, where I remember my wife and I went out to TGI Fridays after to celebrate. We were on that budget life. Yeah, so that was it was a different path back then. But yeah, I got that email. My life crumbled. I picked it back up, and then I made some calls, and luckily it worked out well for me.
Dang, I can only imagine how much like stress that must have been, but also at the end of the day, how rewarding it must have been.
I hope you guys don't go through it.
I would definitely be sweating, but at least you got that sigh of relief at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
All right, so you're obviously a very eloquent speaker and a very personable human being. A lot of us have met you through NSU, through teaching. So could you tell us a little bit more about how you got into mentoring and teaching?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for the compliment. There are times where a lot of actually my life where I have been, and I still am, very introverted. It's very weird that professionally I'm able to speak, and I speak very well, and I can, sometimes I just go on tangents, if I'm being quite honest, when I speak or I get in front of people professionally or in this mentorship role. But personally, I'm very, very introverted. I'm the guy at the party that's like sitting in the corner, petting the dog and on his phone, if I'm being quite honest. But going into the mentorship role, so when I went through residency, now intern year, super duper hard. You guys have probably heard stories of intern year. In fact, I'll tell you this story really quick because I think it's important to say. I remember, well, my first rotation was ER, which was kind of funny because I didn't match ER, but they started me on ER. But it was a nice slow transition into residency because we didn't really, we weren't actively managing our patients. We were working hand in hand with the ER docs. But the next rotation was called the swing shift. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to kind of age myself a little bit, but back in my days, there were not ACGME caps. We were all AOA, so we just saw as many patients as we can. So swing shift was the admitting team from 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. I remember it's basically 2 interns and 2 seniors. So my other intern was Dr. Axman, who was one of my best friends. We actually share a birthday. I'm 1 year older. We start this rotation, and we walk in the ER at 1 p.m. and it's standing room only, like packed. And I'm like, wow, what is going on here? So we go into the call room, and our seniors are like, all right, let's get this ball rolling and start seeing patients. And mind you, I haven't really like done an admission since like maybe towards the end of 3rd year medical school. Like 4th year, I did some ER stuff, and then I did some nice relaxing rotations, radiology, things like that. So I was like, so we admit. I think our busiest day that month, we admitted at least 40 patients, which now the cap is like 12 patients. But I specifically remember that night, first night, leaving the ER, walking out at 1 in the morning, and I said, Josh, what did I just get myself into? Is this what my life is for the next 3 years or the rest of my life? Because I don't know if I can do this, if I'm being quite honest with you. I remember calling my program director. I was like, what this is not normal. Like, this is not how people should work, things like that, right? But luckily, between the support of my co-residents, Dr. Axman, I had great seniors, my family, I was able to get through that rotation. And it did springboard me through residency because I caught my groove. It's a very steep learning curve, but when you catch your groove, you hit the floor running. So I was able to catch my groove, but it was a very important realization for me because it made me understand that 1, inpatient life still is not for me, and 2, it made me really appreciate what outpatient life was for me, how much it meant to me and the role that I can cultivate there. So as I go through residency, I really pick up on outpatient education, outpatient medicine, things like that. And obviously as a resident, as you go forward, you teach the residents below you. And then at the North Miami Beach Family Medicine Clinic, which was Palmetto's continuity clinic, we have 3rd-year students every single month. So I started to catch the bug of teaching the 3rd-year medical students. And when it was said and done, and I was getting ready to figure out what I want to do in terms of getting a job, the one thing I understood was that the rat race of private practice does not appeal to me also. So I was like, okay, outpatient, inpatient, it's not who I am, but also rat race of private, and I say rat race just because that's what I felt, it's just seeing a lot of patients and not really, it's just a different lifestyle. You don't have that congeniality, that, the ability to, just hang out if you want to a little bit and chat with people. And that's kind of how the clinic was in North Miami, where we were there. When we were slow, we would just hang out. Even when we were busy, we would just make sure we were all in good spirits, things like that. And I kind of understood that, well, one, my program director, Dr. Cohen, he kind of saw something in me, and some of the other attendings as well. They saw something in me and said, "Hey, Shane, you have something here." When the students and the residents below you, they come to you, and when you teach, there's something there that, there's some sauce going on there. If it's something you're interested in, maybe consider it. And I was at a point in my life where I was actually considering urgent care a little bit, because it was that mix of, all right, I can kind of work shift work like ER, less acuity, and still get to see some interesting pathology, but also it's still kind of cranking out patients. So I talked with a few people, and lo and behold, after understanding the ins and outs of the role, what I would be doing, the benefits, I said, all right, let me just go for it, because this does sound like what I want to be when I grow up, more than, and I'm going to say just a physician, but we're not just physician. I want to be more than just seeing patients. I understood that, okay, maybe back then I didn't really understand how good or how much of an impact I would have, but I understood that for me personally and how I want my life and my lifestyle to go, this is the best decision for me and my family. So that's how I kind of went into medical education. It was kind of I'm not too sure, but let me just jump off the deep end and see if I swim, because everyone's saying that there's some sauce going on that's swirling in your brain, that people come to you and people appreciate when you teach, and you have something about you and you teach so well and so eloquently, whatever the word is, that I was like, all right, let's see where it takes me. And that's kind of not the end of the story, because there's more to the story, obviously. But yeah, that's how that story started.
Before we get to the end of the story, I want to ask you, so certainly you must have had some sort of idea of what practicing medicine as a, attending physician was going to be like, but then you got there and you see the realities of what practicing medicine was going to be like. Can you tell me, were they the same? Were they a little bit different? Can you kind of compare what you expected to what reality was once you became an attending physician?
Yeah. So going into medical school, and I have the experience, the extent of my medical background or medical exposure was going to the doctor. I shadowed a little bit, but honestly, it wasn't like crazy amounts that you see some applicants doing. I shadowed some docs in the outpatient, some in the inpatient, and that was the extent of my knowledge of what attending life was. I was very fortunate that my pre-med mentor that I shadowed a good bit, he had a very nice setup in his outpatient IM practice up in Boca. I mean, he saw patients not at a crazy rate. He was able to see patients when he wants. He wasn't overbooked all the time. He went home at a good time. So to me, all right, that sounds good. And then as you go through medicine, you understand that, it's not necessarily always that. There are practices that wants you to crank out patients as much as you can. And oh, by the way, you have to finish all your documentation before you go home. And you have to follow up on the labs, and you have to make phone calls. Oof. I don't know. That's not really my vibe, if I'm being quite honest. Now, listen, I can do things. I'm very efficient, and I practice up-to-date medicine, this, that. But at my core being, it's not really who I am. And then I saw it, I think, a little bit more than I would have liked. Just throughout rotations, either in medical school, whatever, I just saw it more often than I would like. And then when I go out to start looking at jobs, they're not telling you that up front, but if you kind of read between the lines, and let's say you look at the vacation package and they're giving you, 10 days your first year, 15 days your second year, or, your pay is, it's, again, we're we're in a very fortunate position, and where you graduate, you're making good money, but if you compare it to the national standard, for what I'm doing, I'm not really being compensated the way I think I should be as well. And that kind of put a burden on me. And, when I see myself in the future, I don't see myself as someone that wants to come home and talk about patient pathology. That's not who I want. That's not who I want to be. And I understood that maybe if I go this route instead, it would be something different. And it's interesting because not many people my age, now I'm 33, I'll be 34 on the 8th. So when I graduated, I was about 29, 30. I had just gotten married my intern year. There's not many people like me that go into medical education. So there was even that. I was like, am I even like, should I go into medical education? Like, would students even listen to me? Would they respect me? So it was a lot of battling ideas in my head. But one thing that really stood true was that, again, the rat race of private practice, at least what I made it out to be in my head, because again, that's not the standard, or rather, that's not every single case. To me, that's not what I want to do. Now, if I talk about my counterpart, Dr. Axman, he is out in Colorado, and his practice is like exactly what I would want to practice. In fact, he's always tries to poach me to come out to Colorado. He works Monday through Friday. He's essentially his own boss. He does a lot of procedures. He's taking residents now, so he still has got a teaching aspect. So it's not to say that there are not jobs that absolutely fit you, but for me, I don't know. I just felt like I had more to give at the time as well. I felt like I understood that I have more to give to medicine than just, and again, I say just, but I don't mean just, than just seeing patients.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us. And now to transition a little bit, we know that you're involved with NFTs and blockchains. We were wondering, how have you been involved with that? Why did you get into it? If you could explain a little bit of what it means to our audience for those who don't know, and if you see an intersection between medicine and NFTs in some way.
Absolutely. So first, let's just define an NFT. So NFT stands for non-fungible token. The next thing is, what is a fungible? What is fungible? So fungible basically means that something can be exchanged or substituted. So let's say you have a $100 bill. You can give me $50 back, and we can say that was a fungible encounter or exchange. Versus something that's non-fungible, it is not interchangeable. It's like a house or a painting. Well, now in the digital world, that is like, okay, so we're seeing like a lot of art, right? So some people are not considering like these JPEGs as art, but the thing about it is it's on the blockchain. So what is the blockchain? Now, when you think about a bank has a ledger where there are interactions or exchanges, transactions is the word I'm looking for, that's going on between person to person, bank to bank, whatever, but those are centralized and they are not public. We don't know what's going on, right? Versus the blockchain. So the blockchain is essentially a public ledger where every transaction is documented. You can see if I send you, Tim, 20 Bitcoin, that would be nice, right? If I were to send you X amount of X cryptocurrency, I can look it up, or Daniel or Raj can look it up on the blockchain based off the transaction ID and see that it is in fact true that it went from my wallet to your wallet. Now we add on this NFT, non-fungible token, right? So even cryptocurrencies are fungible assets. I can give you 1 Bitcoin and then you can send 0.5 here and 0.5 there. Now, if you add on the NFT component of it, so the face of it might be this JPEG, this art pieces that people are like, why are people paying $1 million for an ape, right? But what's the utility behind it is actually the smart contract, one, that's behind it, and two, you being able to say that I own this one of one, and some of them are more rare than others. So that's the beauty behind it, is that I can prove that I own this. So let's say, all right, my favorite basketball player, basketball is my first love. I have I do have I do have a Dwayne Wade draft pick card, number 5. It's not signed, unfortunately, but let's say I had this signed, right? It's a 1 of 1. I can then say that I only own this and I can prove it. Now with NFTs, I can do that because it's publicly on the blockchain. Now, when we get into the smart contract aspect behind it, there are some, like, I have an NFT that just by holding this NFT, it grants you access to these exclusive events just because it's in the smart contract that's behind it. So a lot of the utility of an NFT is not, okay, yes, it's art. I personally see some of them as art pieces, like some of the ones that I buy are art pieces, but also there's a utility behind it. Now, let's go into how do we transect it into medicine? Or rather, before we even get there, how did I get involved in it? During the pandemic, I am very fortunate that my position, I'm not, although yes, physician, you're considered frontline, I'm not in the ERs intubating like, my best friend, or, I'm not in the ICU managing vents, things like that. I had the opportunity in our clinic, as residents and students see the patients, in the free time between clinics, I treated learning about cryptocurrencies as essentially a second job. So I started as cryptocurrencies, learning about blockchain technology, learning what they do, the transactions, what they mean, the security, things like that. And then it kind of parlayed into learning about NFTs as well. And then just so happened that not too long ago, so a doc, Dr. Sina Jarapchi, he's an ears, nose, and throat doc out in Pembroke Pines. We rotated with him as an intern. He is someone that when I rotated with him, amazing mentor, amazing surgeon, amazing physician. He actually put maryngotomy tubes in both of my ears because I have eustachian tube dysfunction, getting sidetracked. But anyways, he started to get really involved in the NFT world. Now, this is someone that has millions of followers across TikTok, Instagram, probably, I think those are his 2 biggest ones. I think TikTok is his biggest one. He got really involved in it and he started learning more about it as well. And I would say within the last year and a half, he dove deep into it, similar to how I did, but he has a little bit more traction to really make some splashes. So he started thinking about ways that he can intersect medicine and NFT blockchain technology. And he came up with this project called the MetaDocs. Now, again, he is very tied into the, I guess you can say, med influencer world. So he got an artist, he got Web3 developers, he started reaching out to these different med influencers. There's a white paper, there's a website, MetaDocs NFT.com. Shameless plug, that if you actually look at it right now, and if you guys want, pull it up and you can see the extent of really how much work has been put into this project. So the goal of this project is, 1, to crowdfund to crowdfund income, I guess you can say, for charity. Our number one goal is to donate $1 million after 100% mint to an autism charity. That is our number one goal. Now, there are not many NFT projects that are, 1, completely doxed, so everyone in the project is known, and that are truly, truly charitable. So with his connections, he has created a group of physicians, I think currently about 20, 23-ish. Dr. Fayez, who was an NSU grad, Dr. Buck, I'm blanking on his specialty. I think I want to say ER. Dr. Osten Chang, who's a amazing world-renowned GI doc. These are docs that are involved in this project. And our goal is not only, again, to crowdfund, to truly donate money, but also to revolutionize medicine in a way that has not been seen before, essentially decentralizing medicine and creating our own PPO, I guess you can say, where that if you hold this NFT plus the coin that's going to, the token that's going to be generated with it, it's called the heart token, you will have access to some of these big name physicians that have 6 months, 9 months waiting lists, where we can do AMAs or Ask Me Anythings every Friday, and you can shoot out messages to these guys and girls, these top-notch physicians, because you have an NFT and you hold that token. But if we're thinking more long-term, hypothetically, one of our goals is to essentially make a virtual clinic using even haptic gloves, the Aura Ring, Cologuard, tools like that. There you go, boom. Using tools like that to create a world where you have access to physicians now currently in the US that you may not have access to otherwise, or maybe someone that doesn't have insurance that can actually utilize this because, hey, actually they have an NFT and they can get some advice there. Now, if you can only imagine the legalities in it, HIPAA, things like that, and these are all things that are still in the works. But long story short, actually, long story, whatever, Dr. Jarabshi kind of understood that I had this interest in blockchain technology. I post about it on social media. I've talked to him about it. Some of the residents still rotate with him. We're like, hey, Dr. Jarabshi is doing this crazy thing. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm kind of doing this thing in NFT world, not nearly his scope. But he remembered, and he always told me something when I was rotating with him, when I was an intern, going back now 7-8 years, he always said, Shane, you got a sauce about you. There's some sort of sauce about you, and it'll pay off at some point. So about a month ago, he reached out to me and said, well, he kind of wanted me involved in the project in some way, but he reached out and said, hey, I see how you speak. I see how eloquent you speak and write. I want you to be one of the community managers for our project. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of this project. It's something we are very, very excited for. We're currently ramping up ads, marketing. We just released our white paper. Our Discord is getting bigger and bigger. So our goal, and you guys may have heard that some NFT projects, they get rugged. People get all this money and then the developers just up and leave. That's not our goal. Our goal is to donate $1 million, and that's just a start. The other thing about this, behind the smart contract, or in the smart contract, is that every transaction, a certain percentage will be put in a pool. That pool will then also be given to charity. So it is a continuous charitable endeavor. And not only that, we're not going to be making decisions as to where it goes. It's going to be part of a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization where essentially the NFT holders and the coin holders vote as to where these funds go. So that's kind of our goal. We're ramping up a lot of things, and we do think that it has the potential to really, hopefully, change the scope of medicine. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That was an incredible explanation. Quick question on that. So can multiple people take ownership of that NFT charity, and how does it work if a bunch of people want to buy in?
Yeah. So
also, to elaborate on that question, is there any way for medical students who are not yet medical professionals to be involved?
Very good question. So also very, very good point is that although we're called MetaDocs and the face of it are physicians, we don't care who you are. Our tagline is be good people, do good things. If you're a good person out there doing good things, we want to know about you and we want you in our system. So to go to Raj's point, can multiple people own an NFT? Technically, no. So technically, it is for your wallet. Now, let's say on the back end, you and Daniel over there, you say, hey, let's share this, or here's my login for this, my wallet, which is not advised. That's how you get hacked. But let's say you trust each other. Technically, I think yes, but technically also no. So kind of a gray zone, but tough to really say. But honestly, we want anyone involved in our project. I don't care who you are, medically, non-medically, it doesn't matter. As long as you're doing good things, that's what we want. And medical student, attending, pre-med, don't care. Come, talk to us. And I'm someone that's actively on the Discord. So, they see me, they see my picture on the MetaDocs NFT.com. They see I'm part of the team. So it just builds that rapport, and they see that, hey, they're doing something. They're doing something big. Daniel had another question?
Yeah, so to go off of Raj's questions about can multiple people own an NFT, I'm just now starting to learn about this, maybe the past 3-4 weeks. Um, can a wallet only be owned by a person, or can like a LLC own a wallet? So like, let's say Raj and I, we don't, but let's say, and Tim, we have like LLC, Medical Muse is like an LLC, right? A corporation.
Mhm.
Can that corporation have its own wallet or not?
I'm not 100% sure on that, because then you also have to start thinking about taxes, because if you do sell an NFT, you have to consider the taxes. Now it is decentralized, so technically, do you have to report it? I don't want to say anything. I'm not a financial advisor, right? But if you're going by the books, it is a taxable event. In fact, I reached out to an accountant about it. Can an LLC be a crypto transactor, NFT transactor? And from my understanding right now, no, but it's such new territory that who's to say? I honestly don't know. Like this is like so early in the game that, the masses are still questioning it. When you think about email, when it started at its inception, the masses were questioning it. Cell phones, the masses were questioning it, and then mass adoption came in. And I think it's not until that mass adoption starts to trickle in, and I think we're getting closer, that those questions will be solidified. Right now, it's kind of a gray zone, and I don't think I'm the best person to answer it.
Yeah, I have one last question regarding NFTs. So obviously MetaDocs is this really novel project that can help bring access to world-renowned physicians to people who in other circumstances would have to wait 6 to 9 months or maybe never even have access to these physicians. So through the smart contracts, how are you ensuring that just like your average person would be able to get access to these top quality physicians? Is there something in place where like how much the NFTs cost? Are they expensive? Can normal people, like let's say me or Raj or Daniel, buy them? And how are you ensuring equality of access?
Right. That is a deep question that I may not be the best person to answer, if I'm being quite honest with you, because the smart contracts, the developments, things like that, I'm not too tapped into that stuff to really speak on it too much. But in terms of like the actual cost, so there's something called a whitelist, which is essentially like a pre-release. And we're actually calling our whitelist the waiting room. Worked out well, right? And I don't want to say anything if I'm not allowed to on how much it's going to be just yet. But let's say you're active on the Discord, and one of the things that we want to see actual people doing good in this world. So we're going to start taking video submissions of people actually doing charitable things, and really putting themselves out there and really showing us that, hey, you're not just someone that wants to get in this project and flip it for some money. You understand the long-term utility of it. So that's kind of how we're giving access to our whitelist. Now, the price thereafter, who knows where it's going to go? Our goal is for it to go high, but we still want it to be accessible to people across the board that can afford it. But we can't control supply and demand. If the demand is high enough, the price will go up, right? So that's kind of why a lot of people try their best to get whitelisted, so they can get access to these projects at a pre-mint price. So usually the mint price is X amount on that date, and then you're given the whitelist is a little bit less on like the day before, and you give out a certain amount of those whitelist spots. So complicated answer, but our goal is to really make it in such a way that if you're in the project and you're there, that you have access. And there's more to it, like tokenomics, which I don't know much about to speak on, that will also play a role into your tier of access as well. So it gets complicated because there's also what we call the heart coin that's being generated. So it's not just the NFT, there's a coin that's generated as well for how long you're holding the NFT. So it kind of it incentivizes you to hold the NFT for longer, because as you gain more heart coin, you gain more access. You can also sell the heart coin, I believe. I don't want to speak on that, but It's complicated, man.
That's amazing. Well, I know I'll definitely be asking you more questions about
Absolutely.
NFTs in the future. It'll be really interesting about with how that NFTs and medicine kind of work together. Changing up gears a little bit, going into more of your motivational and inspirational influences. What does impact over influence mean to you? And what type of teachings did you take away from influencers like Jay Shetty and Justin Baldoni? And how have you incorporated those teachings into your mission?
Absolutely. So impact over influence, it's something that I just kind of popped in my mind. So the other thing I just want to touch on is throughout COVID, again, I had this time to really kind of invest in myself, which is very rare that people just in general had time to invest in themselves, and a physician during COVID had time to invest in themselves. But during medical school, I pushed down the creative side of me. I was always into photography, videography, creative writing, but I had other things in my mind where I couldn't focus on that. So as I started to have a little bit more time, I was work from home if I was not in clinic, I kind of dove back into that side of my brain. And I just so happened very early during COVID, I picked up Jay Shetty's book. It was just released, Think Like a Monk, and I was intrigued. One, looks a lot like me. We are kind of doppelgangers. I don't want to brag a little bit because the guy has these dreamy eyes. I don't have that, unfortunately. But I picked up his book and I started reading it, and everything that he was kind of talking about, humble beginnings, really putting the emphasis on living your life in not just the best way for you, but really the best way for society, and slowing down and taking the time to appreciate the little things in life. That really encompassed the type of art that I was into. So I know some of you guys might follow my Instagram, like my photography. I will usually like to tie it into some like very like relaxing music, and I also try to write something as well. So I haven't been writing too much lately, but I try to make it like this all-encompassing visual auditory experience for a very short time, because people's attention span is very short. So if you're scrolling on Instagram and it's like influencer, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be an influencer. That is not who I am. I detested that word for a very long time. If I have you for your attention span for 15 seconds, I want to make an impact. I want your mind to slow down and just see what I'm saying, or see what my image is, or see what my little video is, because it's not much. I don't want you to do much. Just look, listen, and just reflect for 15 to 30 seconds. And hey, maybe it'll just throw some serotonin in your synapses, and that's what you needed in that moment. And that's what my goal is. So if you go back to influencers, so personally, I have always, this is going back to Dr. Jarabshi. When he started getting big on Instagram, he was like, dude, Shane, you got to get in on this. You got this sauce, man. You would do very well in this world. But I was always the person that, I don't know. One, I'm a private person. I don't necessarily want to put myself out there. And two, what do I got to talk on? Like, I don't know. I don't have that much to say. And three, I don't know. I see what influencer has become, and what are we really influencing? Okay, now someone like Dr. Jarabshi is truly impacting. He is not an influencer. He's impacting, right? But if you really think about what an influencer is, aside from the people that are really doing good in the world with their voice and their platform, what is it doing other than creating negative images and pushing, standards that are not attainable, or, pushing travel goals that in reality, that's not what travel looks like. Travel is, crap, I'm tired from traveling for 26 hours to Bali. That's the reality of it, right? It's not just sitting in front of, your lake villa, blah, blah, blah. So for me, I always kind of pushed away from the word influencer. And I still don't want to do that. So the fact that I never really wanted to take my art public, and people would say, wow, Shane, you're doing something good here. Like, people are like, reach out to me and say, hey, like that little 10-second video that you put on, it really made me think about something, or that thing that you wrote the other day, it really sparked some sort of thought in my mind. It's been ringing in me. And then the other thing is that I started to understand the impact that I've been having in my medical education role. So many students and residents come to me and say, hey, Dr. Williams, okay, yes, we can talk medicine, but also let's talk life. You have something interesting that you can talk about life. And that's where my sauce started brewing. And I said, if I want to do this whole public Instagram thing that I personally don't really agree with, I don't want to do it for followers. I don't want to do it for advertisements. I want to do it for impact over influence. Now, we think about the word influence. Influence means to change someone's mind or change someone's train of thought, to influence what they're doing. Impact is truly doing something, right? It's striking something. It's resonating something, and that's what my goal is. Impact over influence is not, I don't want to influence you. I want to, while I have you, to slow you down and, hey, take a second. And if it sparks your mind to think of something creative or reflective or just calms you down, then I made a small little impact on your life. And those things add up. And that's my whole thing, is even going into medical education and mentorship, it's impact over influence. I can teach you medicine, but also let's talk about who you are. Let's talk about where you want to go. Let's talk about how we can get you to the best mental place that you can be to really achieve these goals. So that's my whole thing behind impact over influence, that I should probably trademark, actually, now that I think of it, right? It's just really, the term influencer, it's being thrown around and I don't agree with it. Not every single person needs to be an influencer, but I feel as if now at this stage in my life, I have a platform where I can actually impact, and I don't care. I don't need to impact 100,000 followers. I need to impact the people that choose to listen to the words that I have to say or what I have to put out there. Go back to Jay Shetty and Justin Baldoni. So I kind of touched on Jay Shetty, just an all-around good dude. I mean, come on, you can't hate on the guy.
I feel like he'd love joining this conversation, because I think we're about to jump into how to meditate soon.
Exactly. Yeah.
And real quick, before you jump into that, I really like what you said, and I feel like you're kind of giving a glimpse into like a very brief meditative experience when you talk about how you create art that stops the moment and gives people that serotonin boost. What are you looking for, and how are you creating that kind of stop when you're putting that art on your Instagram or wherever you may put it? And how are you using that same in treating your patients and kind of making them feel calm and making them stop and just kind of like take a pause? I think that's a very powerful thing for everyone in whatever they do. And I find it very interesting that you're doing that through your art. And just how are you doing that? How are you going about that? And how are you translating that into your patient care?
Absolutely. Very, very good realization that I actually didn't even realize that I do, but I do. So during COVID, it was around my birthday time. I was like, hey, I think it's here somewhere. I was like, my wife was like, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm someone I don't want extravagant gifts or anything like that. I was like, hey, give me a ukulele. So she got me a ukulele, but then I was like, this is hard, man. I can't do this. But I was pinging in my mind, I want to get back into photography, videography, because I was into that stuff in high school and stuff. And I was like, all right, let me just buy the camera that I want. So I purchased the Fuji X-T3 with a nice lens, and I started learning a little bit more about that. And as cliche as it is, as I was looking through the lens, I started to just see things a little bit slower. So if I'm walking outside, I might see the wind ruffling the leaves on the tree, or I might see it's all encompassing now. Like I might see just like this little kid walking with, their dad holding the hand. And I think, oh, wow, that's such a powerful image. If I can just capture it either still or just in my style is like a little bit slow-mo. I forgot exactly what I think 25p 4K. If I could just capture that little image 15 seconds, when in reality slowed down, to what I do is really only about 5 seconds of actual footage. If I can capture that one little image, if it was powerful for me, it might be powerful for someone. And what I've noticed is that people are just go, go, go. Like it's just, we live in this world that is just instant gratification where, oh, I am hungry, let me look on Grubhub and instantly gratify my hunger. Or, oh, I'm bored, which is now the big one. I'm bored. Instead of flooding my mind with things that are going to truly expand my brain, reading or, watching a TED Talk, things like that, let me hop on Instagram and scroll and mindlessly scroll through. Now, I'm guilty. I am 100% guilty of that, right? But now, through utilizing my interest in art and, I listen to just things that are just a little bit slower. I try to match music with what I'm seeing. And it's just like random, like violins or instrumentals or lo-fi music. And then I also try to, sometimes I write, sometimes I don't write. That all-encompassing event is kind of what I call it now. That all-encompassing little event has really given me the opportunity to just slow down. And that's what it comes down to for me. And how I translate it into my patients, I slow down. I talk to them. We can go see patients. That's completely fine. But it's unless we're really sitting down and talking. Now, I'm not talking getting history. I walk in a patient room, I'll hop on the counter and say, hey, what's up? How you doing? How are you doing? Right? And patients will say, oh, doc, I feel this, I feel that. But I'm like, no, how are you truly, like, how are you feeling these days? Tell me a little bit deeper. I try to probe a little bit deeper, and I try to make connections. So just like I have that eye lens brain connection, I try to make intellectual connection with any of my patients just by slowing down and asking them questions that maybe a doctor that's going through and just needs to see patients or whatever the case is may not ask them. Or if it is asking the questions that I need to ask in HPI, it's asking it in such a way that they understand that I'm truly, truly listening to them. Now, if you jump back to first year, second year, those fife and like, hey, how does that make you feel? Now, then you might say, oh, this is fluffy. But in reality, if you do it and you do it from the best place of your heart, and that's really what it comes down to, every single encounter, whomever, now, again, I'm not perfect, patient, random person. In fact, I'll show you this tattoo that I have here. I don't know if you guys can see it too well. It's kind of tough to see, but it's an alien spaceship and a regular spaceship, and they're both clashing. And in the middle, I can't really get it too close. In the middle, it's an explosion of just hearts. So my theory behind each and every of an encounter, I don't care, patient, person, random, is that if we meet each other with love and a place of serenity and a place of, again, I keep going back to the word love, a place of love. Maybe you may not understand it, but hopefully you pick it up from me and you understand that I'm coming from the best place possible. And that's how we make the connections. That's how I connect with my patients. That's how I connect with students. That's how I connect with residents. That's how I connect with anyone these days. It's really trying, and I learned that from Jay Shetty, is really truly trying my best to approach every person, every encounter from a place of love, a place of understanding, a place of neutrality. And once I really started actively trying to do that, because again, I'm not perfect, I don't do it every single time, but if we're trying hard enough, we'll get there to a point where you do see the difference that it makes. And I think I went kind of round robin and answered a bunch of questions and went on tangents, but I think I kind of answered it. It's really slowing down and approaching anything and everything with love. And that's what I'm doing with my art. That's what I do with my patient encounters. That's what I do with my teaching. That's what I do with just hanging out, talking with students, residents, anyone. Just approach it from a place of love, and you will see my true self is, hey, I just want to learn about you, and vice versa. And that, I think that's also why I've been able to make such strong connections in my role.
No, I think that's a very powerful realization to have. I'm also a huge Jay Shetty fan, so I love every time you reference him. I'm like, amazing. It's a very powerful realization to have, and many times I feel like and Jay Shetty himself also went through very difficult moments and turning point moments before he became a monk and before he actually truly went down this path of love and self-discovery and realization. Many people who have that, it seems that many people who have that realization go through some turning point moment in their life or period of difficulty. whatever you're comfortable with, did you have a turning point moment or anything or any personal situation or circumstance, whether it was a challenge or a failure or anything that stood out to you that really kind of changed your perspective and changed your direction in terms of how you wanted to approach your life?
Sure.
Let all your perspectives.
Yeah, no, I would say that I have been very fortunate in my life. Now, I've had struggles, growing up, going back to the immigrant story, we've had struggles that have definitely impacted who I've become. Personally, going through medical school, I was very fortunate that I was good at it. Yes, it is hard, but I didn't struggle too much. I had my stumbling point in the match, but again, it didn't define me. I overcame it. Throughout residency, again, I had my stumbling point in the beginning stages, but I overcame it. I would say that probably the biggest thing that really affected who I was and who I wanted to become was COVID. I would say it took a toll on me in the sense that I saw the tragedy. I really, and again, I don't consider myself, frontline intubating, but yes, I have knowledge about what is going on, and I see the impact that it's having not only on patients but also physicians. And to me, that was probably one of the biggest things that started to impact who I was as a person and a physician. Was I saw the mental toll it's taking on people. And I have, one of my best friends, he's a hospitalist up in New Jersey. And there were times where, I'm sitting and he mainly works at night, he's a nocturnist. So I would catch him right when he got off shift when I was waking up and he was going to bed, and vice versa. When he was going to work and I was going to bed, we'd catch up. And one thing that I realized is that I thought that not many of these physicians have someone to talk to. I started to really understand the weight of mental health, not just for patients, because I can talk about mental health with patients. That's part of the job. But I see the toll that it's taking on physicians and healthcare workers. And when I say healthcare workers, I mean janitor to physician, anyone in between, right? And to me, that was probably the traumatic experience that made me flip the script in my life and say, hey, I am in an opportunity where physicians, people they don't have the time and energy to invest in themselves. So I want to invest in myself so that I can present my best self to whomever needs it. And it's weird because I don't see myself as some, self-help guru or, I have nothing to lecture on about those things. It's just being there for people and being a listening post for someone that needs it. And I think that's kind of where my mind starts to shift into, let me focus on mental health and my mental health and how can I boost myself to boost others, is when I really started to understand where COVID was going and the toll that it was taking on my colleagues, my friends, patients, things like that. There was a second part to the question.
No, I mean, I think you answered it, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Oh, actually, I was going to segue into probably what. Okay, so let me just segue real quick. So
Sure.
The current speed bump in my life that was probably the biggest realization was what I just went through, my 1 month sabbatical, where I don't know what it is. In retrospect, so for those that don't know, I did leave my position as assistant professor of medicine at NSU on January 31st. I started having inklings that, maybe, I don't know, maybe I should take my voice, or maybe I can take my voice elsewhere, or maybe I can take my passions elsewhere. Maybe I can take my knowledge elsewhere. Actually, I don't even want to say it was that. I just felt like I am so young that maybe I should just experience something else. I was in a position where I could pick up urgent care shifts per diem. I was doing some other stuff on the side. I was peer reviewing articles for Medscape. And between those a couple of streams, I was like, hey, I can make a good income and also free up a lot of my time. So I in retrospect, Monday morning quarterbacking, things are always, different when you look back on it. I was looking very far-sighted instead of nearsighted. And when the time came to start telling people that I made the decision to leave, I was very fortunate that my wife supported me throughout it all. My number one supporter, never, whether it's a good decision, bad decision, she still supports me. And at the time, we both thought it was a good decision. When I started telling a couple of my colleagues, they were genuinely sad to see me go. And they said, hey, Shane, just so you know, what you're doing something very special with the students and the residents, and we want you to know that. And then I told the residents. So I'm very close with our residents at Palmetto General Hospital, FM, the PGY 1 through 3s. In fact, this graduating class, the current PGY 3s, are very near and dear to my heart because two of them were Dr. Gajala and Dr. Villarreal. They were actually my third-year students when I was a third-year resident. So I have seen almost every iteration of their medical journey up until when they're about to graduate. And I still have a very special bond with them, and the PGY 1s and 2s, the students that have rotated there, but especially the residents. When it came time to tell them they were having their Christmas party, and I said, I want to tell you guys, my way, right? I don't want to tell you guys just as an email. I got to tell you guys the way I want to tell you. So at the Christmas party, I showed up and I told them, this is where I'm at. I feel as if I have so much to give the world, and I feel as if I need to put myself out there more, and I want to spread my love, and I want to, although what I'm doing here is amazing and great, and I know the impact that I have with you all because they tell me over and over again, I felt as if maybe I need to experience something different because, again, this is all that I've known. That was a very difficult conversation. In fact, one of the residents' wife, she noticed what was happening and the importance of the moment, and she started recording it. And I have that video, and I actually watched it not too long ago in retrospect, and I was like, wow. I'm giving up something. Something isn't sitting right in my tummy here, right? Something isn't sitting right because I see the words that I'm saying, and I see the impact, and I see the emotions, I see the tears that some of my residents have just by me leaving. I've had attendings leave, and I was like, all right, I understand you got to see what else is out there for you. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side, but I never had that emotion. And then that went, they were all very supportive of me. They were all so very supportive of me. And then as I started telling more people at NSU, they're all very supportive of me. And then January 31st came around and, all right, peace, I'm out of here. I'm about to live my life. And then the next day, I'm like, kind of lonely. Okay, this is interesting. All right, so I started doing my side stuff, peer review articles, telemedicine. I had a contract for an urgent care job, per diem. It was nice and relaxing, relatively speaking. And I was like, all right, this sounds fun. But then I started getting emails. I got no less than 20 emails from either former students that are current residents, current students that either through like PCM or procedures or third-year rotations or a lecture reaching out to me, even students that I haven't even worked with yet reach out to me. And the general theme was, Dr. Williams, we're so sad to see you leave. We want you to know that the influence that you've had, not just on our education, but also on our lives, we just want you to know that. And thank you for that. And we're sad to see you go, but we wish you the best, right? And that made I just so happen I'm wearing this. It made my heart swell, but it also created a hole in my heart where I started to really, really go down. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. And we didn't get time to talk about Justin Baldoni, but one of my main things now, especially as a male in this role, is to be more vulnerable. My mental health suffered for this entire month. If I'm being quite honest with you, I started having anxiety. I started to lose my drive to go work out. I didn't want to get out of bed. I was like, man, did I really just make this decision? Like, I want to change the world, but also I understand that I was thinking farsighted. Maybe if I put the right lens on, I would look nearsighted and understand that I am making the difference. I am changing the world. I am impacting people and really, truly doing it. And ruminating in my head, did I make the wrong decision? Crap, I made the wrong decision. I made the wrong decision. I made the wrong decision. And it beat me up. I mean, I had anxiety attacks, and I never had anxiety attacks in my life. And it got to a point where I was like, I made the wrong decision. I need to see if I can, at the very least, part-time, get my foot back in the door. Now, I was still adjunct. So I still adjunct for PCM, things like that, but it's not the same. So I reached out to, my two supervisors in the FM department, and I laid it out to them. I said, hey, I think I made the wrong decision. Some other things happened in my life where, we can talk about that briefly as well, where I was like, I miss this role. I miss who I was. I miss the impact that I was having. I miss, being able to say, hey, I'm in academics and I'm not grinding patients 9 to 5. I have the ability to sit down and think about patients. I have the ability to work on myself. I have a lot of vacation time. I also have really nice benefits as well, which is a plus to the job. And I realized that I will not get that fulfillment anywhere else. If I were to go into primary care, I will be very good at my job. I am very proud to say that I practice up-to-date medicine. I could do procedures, blah, 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 blah. But at my core being, not just professionally, but as a human, I will not have the mentorship and education that my soul desires and my soul seeks. Same thing if I did urgent care, telemedicine. And I shot an email to the powers to be, and I was very blunt, and I said, hey, I made a mistake. How can we make this work? I don't know. Again, I've done a lot of good things in my life. That was probably the one decision that, people say you can't regret decisions that you made. Okay, yes, it actually did work out in my favor at the end of the day, and amazing realizations have been made. And those realizations, I guess, going back to the original question, was that this was my stumbling point. This was me questioning who I was and who I am and what I want to do and who I want to be, and not what I want to do when I grow up, but who I want to be as I continue to grow up. And that was my stumbling block. And it's now that, yes, before my sabbatical, I understood my role and my impact, but now I understand it even more, and I feel even more invigorated. I feel even more charged to continue making an impact. So that was my real stumbling point. And just to quickly speak on what I want to do, and my wife and I are both in a very unique situation. So my wife, for the past 8 years or so, she's been in housing at Barry University. So for the past 4 or 5 years, she's been the associate director of housing at Barry University. So she's basically second in charge of everyone that lives on campus. And it's been extremely stressful for her between COVID, dealing with that, dealing with a lot of times maybe not the most mature undergrad students, things like that. It's been very stressful for her. And she also saw the growth, the personal growth that I did during COVID. And she saw that it started to bleed over to her. And she started seeking out things like the Coalition for Black and Multicultural Empowerment, women's empowerment, started reading more into like transgender equality, things like that. And she figured out that that's where her passion lies. So literally the day after I left my position, she got pulled into her vice president's office and said, hey, there are some changes being made in the university. Do you want the position as director of diversity, inclusion, and equality? And she took it, and it's effective as of July 1st. So now when I think about the role that she has the ability to cultivate change in a diverse a diverse mix of students of all races, sexualities, orientations, whatever you want to list it as. She has the ability to influence a lot of students. And now I don't have that. And I was so seeking that. And now I have it back. And I think about what the two of us, as two young professional immigrants. Now, my wife is South African. Her parents immigrated here from apartheid South Africa. Two young professional brown immigrants have the ability to truly impact the world. And our world right now are our two institutions, but it's very rare that two young professionals truly have the ability to truly impact lives. And, I don't, power couple, Jay-Z, Beyonce, the Obamas, obviously I can't compare myself to them. But when I think about what we have the ability as a couple to achieve, it's more than a job. And this role, I now understand in retrospect, and now going forward, farsighted, nearsighted, the chance and the ability that I have to not just teach medicine at a high caliber, but also help our students and residents navigate not just medicine, but also life, because that's the part of mentorship that is lacking these days. It's someone to truly come and talk to. And we have this opportunity where we can do a lot of good in this world. And as our core beings, as humans, forget the job. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to help other people with similar, not so much stories as us. It doesn't matter.
What's interesting about it is, I know you just you didn't compare yourself, but you mentioned those two power couples. Well, when Jay-Z or Obama influences someone, there's such big celebrities that they don't get to see it every day. You guys are big where you're influencing hundreds of people, but you're going to cross paths with those people every day. And you get to actually see the change probably more than they do, because you're involved in these people's lives very intimately, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we see it.
And also, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable with us. You're speaking of vulnerability in males and vulnerability in medicine, all that kind of stuff. Thank you for coming on this podcast and, telling things about yourself, about your life that isn't necessarily easy to tell, and maybe admitting to some mistakes that you think you realized you made and how you went through the thought process of picking yourself back up. And just thanks for being on the show in general. I think I speak for all three of us. We've thoroughly enjoyed having you, and we've enjoyed the last hour and a half. Thanks for coming on.
It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. I always have a lot to say, so I can keep going, but this is important. This is important discussions that need to be had. And oftentimes the most important discussions are the most uncomfortable ones. So when we talk about vulnerability, I referenced Justin Baldoni, whose life's goal is to undefine masculinity. I identify as a male. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for people that identify as male, it's often very difficult to fight the urge to want to just bottle our emotions down. And I'm still very guilty of it, just going back a month where I don't want to speak to my wife about how I'm feeling. But at the end of the day, that uncomfortable conversation, when we're on the other side of it, we look back and we say, wow, if I didn't have that uncomfortable conversation, I would not feel that burden or that weight off my shoulder. So continue having uncomfortable conversations, because that's how we're going to impact, and that's how we're going to change.
The Medical Muse is produced by Timothy Crowe. Your hosts are Daniel Epstein and Raj Kavadi. Social media coordinator, Anja van der Osten. Music on the show by Foxy Music. For more information, check out foxymusic.com. Ground control to Major Tim. Join us next episode for our interview with Jonathan Clark, a former NASA Space Shuttle crew surgeon, U.S. Naval flight surgeon, and space medicine advisor for the National Space Biomedical Research Institute. Lastly, we'd love to connect with you. Follow us on Instagram at _medical_muse. See you next time.